Hello, my name is Dr Morne Mostert. I'm the Director of the Institute for Futures Research at Stellenbosch University, and I'm here at We Read For You, an interesting idea where some of our researchers and academics read books and we share it with our clients in business. So today we will talk about Plato and a Platypus Walk into a Bar, a fantastic exploration of the parallels between philosophy and humour. It's important that we examine philosophy in a time when we are debating post-truth, when we are debating the suspicion of experts. It's also important to explore the ideas around humour, not because we want to trivialize the seriousness of matters, but simply because humour liberates the mind. It allows for flow in the thinking, and that's important. So philosophy guides decision-making, and decision-making shapes your future. That's why this is important. Your philosophy determines your decisions, and your decisions determine your future. So that's why philosophy is really an essential part of futures. But then, of course, as you can hear from this, it's not just philosophy. The title of the book is formulated like a classical gag line, right? You know, a rabbi, a priest, and a 12-year-old walk into a bar. It's that kind of thing. The book, very interestingly, written by these two old guys. They're both over 70. It's a sort of time, I guess, when you can afford to do something called philosophy. Philosophy is not exactly something you put in your Outlook diary Thursday afternoon, 3 o'clock. I'll be doing a bit of philosophy. Please leave me alone. But when you're 70, then I guess you have the kind of luxury of doing that. And kick off with this kind of idea by McLuhan, who said, for your information, let me ask you a question. This is a kind of a classical philosophical idea, right? The idea is that questions beget questions, because it gives you a kind of an increasingly deeper understanding of what's going on. And of course, that's what we're after. The book is named after this guy, Plato. He's, of course, philosopher in classical Greek and founder of this academy in Athens, which is really important for universities because it's sometimes considered to be the first institution of higher learning, first university in the world. Lots of debates about what is, in fact, the first university in the world. And he was a student of Socrates and a teacher of Aristotle, which is just showing off, basically, if you're a philosopher. That is a platypus, not a philosopher. But what's interesting about the platypus is that it exhibits this quality of what we call in systems thinking mosaicism. In other words, it's like a mosaic. Or put another way, it looks as if it's been put together by a committee. We'll take a little bit of this, we'll take a little bit of that. And in fact, you think I'm joking about this, but when it was first discovered, this is exactly what they thought. The scientists thought, there is no way that nature can produce this crazy, funny thing. This must be a gag. Yeah? Of course, it turned out not to be, as so much wisdom often is. That is a bar. You're very familiar with that. You're familiar with the idea of déjà vu from the French, seen before. Vu jeté is this idea that you don't think you've seen it before, you know that you have seen it before. You come across it and you know, I have seen this before. As we say in South Africa, I have seen this for sure. But you're looking at it as if it is, in fact, the first time that you come across it. And that starts to open up the possibility for innovation. Yeah? In Buddhism, it's called the beginner's mind. Yeah? You're like a student every time. Friedman calls it think like an immigrant. It's the idea that you're coming at it not with the same spreadsheet you've had for the last 10 years plus 12%. You're coming at this with some kind of fresh observation. And is that possible? So what's the concept? The idea is that philosophy and humour have the same construction or similar construction and similar payoff. In other words, they tease and they reframe the mind. Humour does that, and philosophy does that as well. It takes you along a little path that seems normal, when suddenly something is revealed. Yeah? So what's the book going to cover? Well, it's the usual suspects of philosophy. Metaphysics, logic, epistemology. I'll talk about most of these. Epistemology, very important for universities. It's the science of knowledge. What is knowledge? What does it mean to know something? How do you know that you know? Ethics, philosophy of religion, what a sensitive one. Existentialism, are we really here and what are we doing here? The philosophy of language, social political philosophy, very relevant for South Africa. Relativity, versus, let's say, absolutism. And then meta-philosophy, the philosophy of philosophy. So that's what the book is really about. And it tries to do that very ambitiously by comparing it with the structure of humour and exploring whether there is, in fact, a parallel to be drawn between philosophy and humour and what it might mean for us. So what the hell is philosophy? This is a kind of classical meta-philosophical question. What is it? If you're interested, academics refer to this as an ontological question. Where does it come from? How do you define it? What is the thing? And maybe the etymology helps us. It's the love of wisdom. The love of wisdom. Now, ladies and gentlemen, why is this so important? We are in an era of post-truth. We are in an era of fake news. We are in an era where experts are referred to continuously and increasingly as so-called experts. We are also in an era of absolute explosion of democracy, and while that is, of course, to be applauded, the downside of that is people think that their opinions are just as relevant as science, or knowledge, or wisdom. And why that may be a lovely theoretical idea, when you go for your next brain scan, you're not going to just ask someone's random opinion because you're a Democrat. You're going to look for the guy, not just with the knowledge, but with the wisdom. So this is an important idea for our time. This re-emergence of philosophy, the love of wisdom, the pursuit of wisdom, which, I think is tremendously lacking in the way that we go. I would go as far as to say that in many business environments there is an almost anti-intellectualism. Yeah? We see this all the time. People at middle and even senior management, just below board level or just below executive level, sometimes say, it's so obvious, but I can't get my idea through. There seems to be something else going on, and it's not the love of wisdom that's preventing this from working. Something else is going on. So then, if that's philosophy, what's humour? Well, I would say if you have to ask, then you probably don't have a sense of humour. But one of the important things is that humour has a little bit of a risk about it. If it doesn't have that, it's probably not going to be very funny. If it's not a little bit risky, in other words, you leap across a chasm a little bit. And if you don't do that, if you just walk along, if you just say kind of a man walks down a street, that's not funny yet. Yeah? There's got to be a win suddenly. The banana says no thank you. And that surprises you. You think from all the millions of options that we could have had after that first line. So you can see that humor is immensely innovative, immensely creative. And you can also see the rise of stand-up comedy, for example, in the world today. An enormous industry, right across the world. So one of the best theories I like about humor is this guy, Peter McGrath, who has this idea of he says humor is benign violation. What he means by this is there's got to be a little bit of a violation. Yeah? You've got to make people feel a little bit kind of awkward. But you've got to do that in a way that's not bad for them. Yeah? Or for yourself. Even your own perspectives on life. If you can often see the humor in that, and heaven knows we need it, it's almost as if you kind of realize, well, this is a bit silly. I've just upgraded my car every 2 or 3 years for the last 10 years. That is a bit funny. It is a weird thing. Why am I doing that? What am I hoping for? It's a bit strange. So you're violating your own decision-making in a certain sense, but in a way it's also kind of good for you. Yeah? Like, why am I doing this? Very philosophical question. So it's like a benign violation. So if I were, for example, to say to you, okay, I'm going to count down from 5 to 0, and then when I get to 0, you're going to smell each other. You can see that your mind kind of has a little giggle about that. It's not my best work, but it's something. And there's a kind of violation there, isn't there? It's kind of a little chasm that you're just jumping over. You're just going to go like that. but it's not that dangerous. It's not that dangerous. And especially when you're working with the mind, of course, if you have the intellectual agility, you can recover. So humour has, as we've illustrated now, the element of surprise. There it is on the elemental table. So the book then starts with the big questions, right? That's philosophy. What is God? Why are we here? What are we trying to do? What is ethical? What is fair? What should I be doing with myself? Why? What am I trying to do? All the easy questions. All the easy questions. So one of them, starts with this concept of infinite regress. And the book is structured in that every chapter has a little introductory dialogue between Tassos and Dimitri, and they have a little bit of a philosophical discussion. And in the first opening chapter, they have this discussion about, this is 2,000 years ago, of course the Earth is flat. And the question is, what is the Earth resting on? And the answer is, well, Atlas is holding it up. This is literally the belief. Makes you wonder what kind of beliefs we have today that are as ridiculous as this. And then Dimitri says, but what is Atlas resting on? And Tassos says, well, obviously, it's a turtle. And then you can see the line of questioning. It's infinitely regressing somewhere, right? So the next question is an obvious one. What is that turtle resting on? And of course, Dimitri's reply is, well, I'm afraid it's turtles all the way down. So as you can see from this, it's not the world's best argument, but it has this kind of feel that I have no idea what the hell I'm talking about. It's a kind of theory I have. It's not really based on anything. I just kind of believe that's how it is. The world is flat. And the stuff is just resting on other stuff. And if you just don't probe too much, because then I really will collapse. My argument will collapse completely. It caught out easily. Just one or two questions and bang, your philosophy's dead. Here's another interesting example of logic and deductive reasoning. And it plays with this idea that we are very interested in. And of course, one of the legal requirements for a futurist is to have a Latin phrase at least once in a presentation. So there it is, post hoc ergo propter hoc. What the hell does it mean? Literally, it means after this, therefore, because of this. In other words, it's the idea that if something happens after something else, it must have been caused by the first thing. So they talk about a large number of these fallacies, the Monte Carlo fallacy. I was in Monte Carlo a few weeks ago. It was absolutely fantastic. But it's this idea of when it lands on red 100 times, the probability is it's going to land on black the next time. And actually, that's a fallacy. It's not true. It's got the same probability every time. And there are a number of these things. The idea that you should always take a bomb onto the plane because the chances that there'll be 2 bombs on a plane are almost zero. Yeah. So in this one joke, these 3 guys in the bar, they're having this philosophical discussion, which you often have in a bar, and they say, look, if you are in your deathbed in the hospital, and it's game over, and your family come to the hospital bed, and they're looking over you like this, what would you like them to say? So the first guy said, look, I'd like my wife to say that I was really caring and loving, and I'd like my children to say that I was a good father. The second guy says, I'd like to believe that I made some sort of contribution to the world and shaped society. The third guy says, look, if I have people lying over me and they think I'm dead, the thing I'd like them to say is, look, he's moving. In other words, I'm not really dead. This idea of these ducks coming to classic humor, right? You would never imagine a duck coming to your door and asking you a question, but the duck says, have you ever thought about becoming a duck? So this asks a really interesting question, because it says, it's in a way, have you thought about changing your mind? A very uncomfortable thought. But even, have you ever thought about becoming something else? This will be very interesting in the future, because, of course, careers are multi-decadal now, as we know, and multiple careers are, of course, one example of this. So I think about my father retiring. He still thinks of himself as the main job that he did. That's him. But of course, kids of the future will have, as some of us are now saying, 8 distinct careers, guys who are born today. 8 distinct careers, not jobs, careers. Accountant, doctor, salesman, old age home manager, whatever it might be. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, why is this so important? You cannot think if you are too serious. Your mind just gets, it gets sclerosis. It's fixed like a spreadsheet. To be imaginative and creative, you have to think properly, call it philosophy if you want. And you have to find new opportunities, of which humor is just one mechanism. You've been very lovely, audience. Thank you very much. Thank you.